writer and journalist. I'm also the curator at Baraza Media Lab, which is a media lab in partnership with the Nairobi City County. We support the media ecosystem and creatives. I'm also your moderator for this session. And to begin, I would like to invite Dr. Anastasia Nyalita, who is the CEC in charge of inclusivity, public participation, and customer service, to start us off with a few remarks, and then we can get started with this panel. Karibu.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Anastasia Nyalita, the County Executive Committee member for Inclusivity, Public Participation, and Customer Service at the Nairobi City County. It's a mouthful, but I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and why it matters with the subject matter that we're discussing today. I was asked to talk about, in my remarks, well, maybe I go back also to the theme that, bridging the gap between government and media.
Creative.
And creative, yeah. And of course, for anyone, you have to do like a baseline survey, if I may say. But more important is understanding the both sides of a coin, the creative vis-a-vis the government. And mine is to tell you a little bit about the government, and in particular, the sector that I lead, and how we are organized, so that as you discuss about tech and creative, then you know how can we partner, what are the opportunities, what opportunities do you see in helping us make Nairobi work. So basically, that's my work. So, of course, you all know the county governments are led by the governor. Our governor is His Excellency Governor Sakaja. We have 10 subsectors within the county, or what we would call the ministries. That's the equivalent of the ministries at the county, at the national level. For us, they're called sectors or departments. There are 10 of them. And inclusivity, public participation, and customer service is one of them. And we have within the sector, we have 3 subsectors. One is led by my colleague here, whom you all know, as a county chief executive officer for culture, arts, and tourism. And I think that's a reason why myself and Clément have been invited to sit here. And basically, we are looking at how do we create the vibe of a city, how do we continue to sustain the annual Nairobi Festival. Of course, a lot of creativity required there, cultural activities, and so on and so forth. Dissemination of information, promotion of culture, arts, and tourism, among others. Development of activities that engage, the youth and the elderly in terms of inclusivity. But more important for us also is the subsector on public engagement, citizen engagement, and customer service, which now engages across the board, keeps the citizens engaged, but also from a county perspective, also things to do with public relations and communications. Again, how do we do that in a creative manner? Of course, customer service experience, how can technology help us on time? Finally is gender and inclusivity, and we have our colleague, Chief Officer Mariam, on next door. She's speaking about inclusivity vis-a-vis the subject topic. And her mandate is mainly gender mainstreaming, disability mainstreaming, and formative action, promote and manage programs for children, women, and persons living with disabilities, gender-based violence, awareness, prevention, and county safe houses. So safe houses are those places where we put the victims of gender-based violence before we help them, support them before they are integrated back into the community, and also promotion and ensure compliance with the preferences and reservations of targeting special interest groups on matters of procurement. Maybe you may all know that 30% of public procurement opportunities should be reserved for youth, women, and persons with disabilities. So just an overview of what is it that we do in the sector. But more important, I think what's very relevant for you, for everyone here, is what Clément is going to talk into detail, so about city culture, arts, and tourism. Without further ado, I want to stop there. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate those few remarks. Ma'am, I'll ask you to take a seat down. The stairs are right there. To get us started, I'm going to shift to be seated so that I can ask the questions to my colleagues here who are all on the hot seat. There are 3 hot seats today. All right. Again, I come to you as a writer and journalist, very much a practitioner in this space. So I'm not asking these questions from a sense of detachment, but being very much involved and, this is my day-to-day. Even as curator of a media lab, I'm still a freelance journalist. I still pitch stories and work with editors, and I'm a practitioner in every sense of the word. So to get us started, I'd just like to actually just go into the first question. I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves as they answer. I think that will save time because we are really running short on time. So to begin, Paul Otieno, who will tell us more about himself. How would you describe the current relationship between creatives and the Nairobi County government? Do you see any challenges in the sector? And how would you paint a picture for the state of the creative economy from where you stand?
All right, so my name is Paul Otieno, but popularly known as Paushinsky. I'm an independent creative director and a photographer, and I have a lot of interest in film, because also, I write film as well. Also, I served as a public officer, as a director in the Kenya Film Classification Board up until February of this year. In terms of the relationship between the Nairobi County government and creatives, I think right now we are at a much better place than before. There's a lot more to be done, but we are at a much better place. I'll tell you why. I think the 2 past county governments, the best they gave us was a branded bus.
What was the bus for?
For city tours, and it was really well branded. It looked like Anganya from Ronga. I mean, it was neat, but that's all we saw from the 2 previous governments. Of course, it can look like they're not doing much, but Nairobi is the vibe of the country, so they're always supporting concerts and performances by the fact that they're happening here. So if you have an international artist, or if you have a local artist who's performing at KCC or they're at Carnival, the county government is involved. The thing that I think this current government should do, and I'm assuming they're already doing, is we need to do a lot of policy work. Generally, I don't think creativity is a devolved function. Yeah, but streams of creativity, and for me as a photographer, if I go to shoot in Masai Mara, it's a totally different ball game than if I was shooting in Nairobi, which is now free for a photographer. Yeah, so those, in terms of what needs to be done, there's a lot of policy work that needs to be done. The other thing that this county government needs to do is, we have legislation, like we have CAP 222. We have the Kenya Film Authority Bill. We have a lot of, like if you go to CS Babu's office, there are things to do with heritage that were put as part of the arts that need to go back to the arts. And a lot of these things, even in terms of policy, are done with an outward focus on taking our work externally, but we are not doing quite a bit of work internally. So for example, if you go to Kajiado, which is not part of Nairobi, but just to prove a point, or if you go to the city, not city, it's called the Maasai Market, just outside the law courts. The work that those artisans do as creatives, because we consider them creatives, is for export. We are not doing a lot more for our internal consumption in terms of arts. So I think those will be the few things I will see that I will need, the gaps that will need to be sorted. But most importantly, I think we need to figure out our policy as a priority.
Let's shift to policy. I'm going to direct this to Clement Sijeni, who you may know as Clemo, but he will introduce himself properly. Pau has just spoken about the need for policy interventions in the space. What strategies is the county government already undertaking or can adopt to create a more conducive environment for creative businesses to flourish? I just want to pick it up from where Pau left it, where you said that a lot of our creative output is directed towards tourism, towards external consumption, I would say. And for you, Clemo, your department is culture, arts, and tourism. Yes. And I just want us to kind of unpack that, if that relationship has to be there, or how you see it, and how we can actually center ourselves as Nairobians and not necessarily for so-called external consumption.
Yes, thank you. My name is Clement Rapudo Sijeni. I'm the Chief Officer, Nairobi City County, responsible for city culture, arts, and tourism. First of all, let's agree that this government is different. For the first time, we have a full subsector that actually deals with matters, arts. Of course, arts, there's no you can talk about arts without having an element of culture in it, because it's very broad, right? And being that this is new, obviously, there's a lot that has not been done in terms of preparing policies. But if you look at our CIDP, our 5-year plan for the county, you have budget lines for policy development. So this financial year, we'll start getting in touch with stakeholders like yourselves. We'll need input, because for us to do any policy, we must first gather data. We must know what we are dealing with, and we interpret the data, get views of the stakeholders, input of the stakeholders. But remember that as a government, ours is to facilitate. We are not in business, so this is your document. This document will belong to you people, the creative industry, including myself, because I'm a creative, right? So soon we shall be having meetings with all stakeholders. So expect to get invitations from the Nairobi City County. Come and give your contributions. Once that is there, we'll definitely draft a policy, which we all have to buy into. Then we'll follow all the due process that normally comes with getting legal frameworks to the assembly and having them as law. So, and again, let's agree that Sakaja, the governor, wants this thing to work, and that's why he chose to put a producer, someone who's interacted with the creative industry in this position. And being that I've toiled and suffered in the industry, in this space, I'll definitely want to leave a mark myself after 5 years, 4 years that are left. So what I can promise here is that we'll definitely have a policy that will guide. And of course the challenge again is that yes, like you said, some elements have not been devolved. And right now, COG is in talks with the national government to devolve some of these things. Because I think previous governments never took arts seriously, but things are different right now.
Thank you for your response. I'm going to direct this to Wainaina Moirori now, who will introduce himself as he answers as well, but is representing the Youth and Talent Docket. So Clement has just talked about the need for gathering data in order to craft policies. Yeah? I'm just wondering if you can respond to that or add on it, especially considering that in our experience, like Pau said when he was speaking, some of the real interventions actually do not go through this elaborate process, right? The governor just said, no more harassment of photographers, and it was done. It was, let there be, and there was. So I'm wondering if you can talk about the kinds of low-hanging fruit that you see that the county can do that may not be caught up in kind of convoluted processes, but that can really empower and center young people right at the get-go.
Thank you, Christine. Let me introduce myself. My name is Wainaina Wairore. I work in the Department of Youth Affairs, but then the larger subsector is youth, talent, and sport. Maybe just to add on and to respond to your question, because I think the concern, among creatives or artists is whether what Governor Sakaja has done will be, sometimes there needs for continuity. So it's not something that happens with just this administration, but it's something that will be continued by the next administration. And I think that's a legitimate concern. And I believe that's where I think what Clément was mentioning about issues of policy, probably even issues of legislations. We think an environment that will supersede whoever is in government. But in terms of low-hanging fruit, and we have some areas which are cross-cutting with what Clément is dealing with. You've heard about issues of now talent. When you mention about talent, when you mention about youth, they will form probably majority of the creatives. Yeah? And what we've done as a subsector, we've been able to, and I think Paul mentioned something about the Maasai market kind of thing. We have a department known as Community Development Section that is organizing every month. So if you're keen along Aga Khan Walk, you'll see some groups, young people, but also women groups, who are also coming to showcase some of their products. So it's a monthly thing that is happening. So I think that's a low-hanging fruit that has been made possible, of course, by the governor. We also have within our subsector, we've collaborated with some of these organizations that are within the creative space. And I know like one who had invited us just a couple of weeks back, they're trying to develop a manual that will guide just the creatives on how to operate. So what do they need to be informed? How do, just a lot of issues around it. And I think that's an area where artists probably will also need to get empowered. So I think that's another opportunity we have, just to work with organizations or stakeholders within that space. And maybe finally is we have spaces within our socials, we call them socials, in Nairobi. And we have around 29 socials in Nairobi, which are actually used, some of them, not all of them, but I know a couple of them are used by creatives when they're doing their rehearsals before they go on stage plays and theaters. And we have made those spaces available to these creatives. So I think there are low-hanging fruits. Probably we need to do a lot of awareness about them so that even creatives are aware about it. But I think the challenge that I will also give to creatives, and because I think it's one of the questions that came on how they can collaborate with government, is it's easier for government to work with creatives who are in a sort of a group or an institution or an organization, as opposed to working with creatives individually. So it will be a bit tricky if you as Christine would want to approach the county on a certain area on your own, but I think it works better if you're in part of a group or an organization that deals with creatives. So I think for me that those are opportunities that are available to work with the county government.
This just segues perfectly into my next question, which was about how artists and creatives can better organize themselves so that they can advocate together. Pao, I don't know if you have any insights around that. What kind of organization do we have around this industry? Is everyone just doing their own thing in their own corner? And is there a way for us to kind of concentrate those efforts in a way that is, you know, responsive to what Wainaina just described?
Yeah, but before I go to that, in terms of data, I think generally we have a lot of data. I think probably our biggest challenge is to interpret this data that we already have. And I'm just responding to Clemo, who actually is my big brother, and he might beat me, Ngotos over here. But towards the end of the last administration, the CS Joe Musheru actually launched a geomapping report research, which had been done in collaboration with Kenya Film School, Kenya Film Commission, Kenya Film Classification Board. There was the National Youth Council, and there was, I think, Survey of Kenya, and it was a big launch at top KICC. Also, these government agencies have a lot of this data, and the data was, you know, they had data for Nairobi, and for Nairobi they had data for Langata, that data for East Lando, they had data for all these places. So I think even as you're probably considering and formulating questions for your next research, probably should be able to just take a look at what the former CS launched. In terms of low-hanging fruits, the one thing we learned when I was at when I was at KFCB was that infrastructure will always follow policy. Infrastructure will always follow policy. So if we decide to build a hotel in the middle of Masai Mara, we will find a road to get to that hotel. So then the other thing that we need to do is, you know, to create those small frameworks that at the end of the day they help us get faster. And my thing is faster. We're not asking for a perfect policy. We're asking for a policy that we can panel beat. And like you said rightfully, it needs to live beyond this administration, whether it's here for 2 years or 1 year. It needs to live for a long term. I'm sorry, now you can ask me your question.
About organizing, yeah.
You know what we do perfectly in Kenya, which in my opinion is one of the most creative countries. I mean, we hands down with our eyes closed, we can beat the rest of East Africa when it comes to creativity. And in the different subsectors, maybe Bongo can beat us in music because of the strategies. We can take on South Africa, we can take on Morocco, we can take on the West of Africa, but we run our associations terribly. We run our associations terribly. And you know, Clemo probably have experience. How we run MCSK is a problem. How we run PAK is a problem. You know, how we run the guilds and the, you know, whatever small creative groupings that we have, what we end up doing is we create gatekeepers, but we forget that the work of gatekeepers is to keep the gates open for as long as possible, for as many as possible people to go through. So when you have the small groupings, then you have, if I want to talk music, I must only talk to Dr. Alfred Mutua, because, you know, MCSK. If I want to talk to artists, I can talk to Camp. Or if I want to talk to photographers, I can only talk to PAK. I think what we need to do is to allow smaller factions to form and give them a voice and a panel in these specific places. Then we dismantle that pedestal for our gatekeeper, where if I have to talk to to the minister. I have to go through the CEC. I think that's what we need to strengthen our associations, but we also need to give the members of those associations a strong voice. And it comes both with training and consistent capacity building. So that the voices of even those who are inside can be heard clearly. So we are just not hearing the guy who sits at the helm, but we're also hearing what the watchman is saying at the gate.
I love how you've phrased it. If anyone is taking notes, this is the point where we write this down for posterity. The work of gatekeepers is to keep the gate open, not to shut it in people's faces.
For as long as possible and for as many people as possible to go through.
I also like what you said about the importance of having a diversity of interests and a diversity of voices instead of monopolizing those kind of power centers. Clemo, I can see that you really want to jump in, and I'll give you this opportunity to do so.
Very patient. No, well, I would add this as well, that the work of the gatekeepers is also to keep away intruders, unwanted characters. I've seen it many times before, where good initiatives, we come up with good initiatives and invite people for some kind of conversation, but you end up getting people who have interests in those conversations. I probably think there's a reason why certain laws were developed to actually maybe get rid of certain groupings from disrupting meaningful conversations. Like that thing of copyright. You can't have too many organizations, because who is right and who is wrong? Everyone will have their own ideas. It's important that there be democracy. Join these conversations, join these groupings, because what normally happens is that we have these stereotypes where all these organizations are corrupt. I mean, if you want to change a system, join that system and try and lobby. Lobbying is always critical if you want to have your your ideas accepted or ideas adopted. Most Kenyans don't actively participate. Let me talk about Nairobians. Don't actively participate yeah, in such groupings. In fact, in these organizations, let me call out for instance, the camp, the PRISC. Artists, Nairobi artists don't care. Nairobi artists are not members of these groups. So
there's a reason for that though, Clemo, isn't there?
Because in Kenya, there's a problem. Ukiwa pale juu, unadhulumu everyone else uko chini. It's just a stereotype. It's a mentality which will be shunned. Right? So there's that negative perception even before you join that organization, even before you understand what this organization is about, what that organization is about, you've already shunned it. You understand? So it's important that artists be members of these groups, because the government only recognizes the groups that it gives licenses to. Anything else, do it through public participation, which is still enshrined in the law. I don't know whether I've made a point there.
Yeah, so the engagement is through those organizations and through those, in a formal sense, right?
Like it or not, if today, say the president or the governor calls for a meeting and wants to talk to an organization, a formal organization, your organization yako ya mtaani will never get an opportunity. So be part of this. If I wanted to be the governor of Nairobi, say my feelings, I'm an independent person, someone who feels that the governor Sakaja is not doing maybe his work, or rather is not performing as maybe he had promised. The best way is not to try and overthrow Sakaja, is for me to lobby for votes, wait for my time. There's no other way. So if you feel like PRISC is not working, camp is not working, go and get your people, join that organization, get them to vote for you, so that you can bring the change that you're looking for.
Well, I'm sure some people in this room have experience of joining organizations and running for leadership. I see Pao has something to say. I just want to let everyone in the room know that we're going to take just one round of Q&A in the interest of time. It will be in the next few minutes. I will give you some time to ask a few questions. I just thought I would make that announcement now so that you can begin to prepare your questions if you have any. But in the meantime, I'd like to ask this question, and anyone on the panel can answer it. What are some of the examples that we can learn from other cities in supporting the creative economy that Nairobi can learn from and adapt? If we're just to cast our eye outside a bit and get some inspiration from other places, because I believe we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We can take some lessons that we've seen working or people trying to innovate with in other places. Anyone who has some concrete examples?
Let me, being someone who's been in the industry, I'll tell you one thing for sure. Activism is good, but it has to be regulated, sort of managed. We can be, sometimes creative, we call it the creative industry, right? An industry meaning it's supposed to generate some form of revenue for, or livelihoods for the people who are in it, right? So let's treat this as a business. Kenyans are not doing so.
Clemo, if I'm to ask you to just elaborate on that a bit, what does it look like when artists treat it as a business? What needs to change, like in specifics?
In fact, our issues with the industry is not that we are not creative enough or we don't have the right equipment or what. We have everything. As ours, we need to learn to work together and pay everyone their dues. Period. If you're a songwriter, you're entitled to your royalties. Right? The way it happens today is that the artist is the king or queen. You are there, say you're a songwriter, you're there at the mercy of the artist. You're a producer, you're there at the mercy of the artist. In other cities, it is balanced, and there now this group, these organizations like BREAK and whatnot, do more than just collect royalties from matatus, and instead also follow up with royalties made from publishing and all these other things. So let's treat it as a business. That should be the conversation.
And have those systems in place that you're talking about.
And that is where now Nairobi County comes in our own small way, because this is not a devolved function. We've actually had meetings with producers and all the songwriters, because say if for a musician, because creative space is broad, let me talk about music. Music starts from the studio level, right? It's a producer who renders that song. But let me not talk about my stories, but...
Clemo, you're going to have at the end, I'm going to close this panel with a question specifically for you. So
kindly.
Just hold that thought. Anyone else with some examples from other cities that you've seen work that you would like to share as our audience is preparing their questions?
I can go?
Go for it.
I think we learned quite a few things when we were at KFCB. So one of the things we really struggled with was revenue collection from these big distribution channels, even local channels who are not paying their fees. So of course, because it's government, we went to South Africa to benchmark. And we came back with solutions. So we were able to bring in, DSTV, Showmax, all these guys into the fold. We released a public participation document to create policy. And what the big thing we learned there is, if you engage people, engage back. It is easier for the county government to go to the people than the people to come to the county government. Not because the county government is hostile, but because there's bureaucracy. There's a channel that has to be followed from the start to the end. Before it gets to the governor, it has to go through specific people. That's one. Secondly, and just our neighbors here, and you know, Clemo, you know that Nairobi is about 7.5 million Nairobians per day, but at night we are about 5.5 because most of everyone does not live in Nairobi. Majority of the people just come from, you know, the periphery to come do their hustle, and then in the evening they go back home. So even that definition of who the Nairobian is crazy. But I was saying Machakos and now CS Mtua would run every year in October. They will run a film competition. That's something that we can pick up. In South Africa, the different provinces give money, like literal cash, for production. And that's really important for us because, you know, South Africa and Kenya signed, when President Ruto took power and the South African president, we signed a co-production treaty, which means that Nairobi can collaborate with Johannesburg or Durban to co-produce content, specifically film for me. You know, so we've seen that, you know, those cities are reaching out to different cities to on those co-production things. They're giving the citizens money to create content, and then they're building spaces for creatives. And you know what we say? We say motivational speaking can go so far, but we need brick and mortar. We need Clemo, we need you to give us 200K per person to shoot short films. The other thing we've seen with creatives in the different spaces is, and the brilliant move that His Excellency Sakaja said that photographers should not be harassed. What are we doing with those photos? Those should be the things then that should be pushing the Nairobi narrative. And you know, like with him and everyone else, this thing has to work. But we have references that we can look at and see, you know, it's working in these other places. Is it possible for us to adopt those strategies even for local realities?
Let me just respond to that.
Sure. But before you respond, we'll take the questions after Clemo's remarks just now. So if you have questions, Lillian, my colleague here, will come to you. I'm going to take only one round of questions, so 3 or 4 questions in total, and then we shift back to the panelists. Go ahead, Clemo.
Yes, so one thing I learned when I got into government is that government is not in business. Government does not do business. Ours is to facilitate, meaning make the environment conducive. And I think most of all these concerns that we have will be answered through good policy, a good policy document that addresses everything. But again, let's not be afraid to talk about the real issues in the room. Because if we are out to make the industry conducive as we desire, then let's talk about the difficult issues like the remuneration bit. You're talking about brick and mortar. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. That is what all governments before this one were doing. That when you talk about creative space, it's brush like, Hassan, okay, so let's just give them, okay, this, please, okay, Lolo, yeah, hi, Poteni, let's talk about health and other things. And people don't know that this is now the leading creator today for the youth, leading revenue stream for the youth today, right? Yes, and I'm glad that the governor saw it fit that, I mean, we talk about the real issues. He has created opportunities the best way he can by also, we're actually creating spaces for creative. We have partnered with the organizations to have these spaces for creatives. We have our Nairobi Festival. The whole idea behind it is to actually showcase and give opportunities to these creative spaces. And if you attended last year's Nairobi Festival, we had photographers, had everything, anything art, and trade as well, in addition. And traders, we gave the youth the opportunity to actually showcase whatever they had and sell stuff. But let's talk about the real issues. I'll invite, and to be part of everyone here will be part of that stakeholder forum where we'll discuss the real issues so that we come up with a concrete document.
Clemo, before I turn to the room, what if you're to list these real issues as bullet points? I don't want us to imagine that we all have the same thing in mind. Bullet points, what are those real
The conversation
issues?
here, my issue is the conversation has always been, what can the government do for us? Mm-hmm. And mostly it's about cash. Government needs to pay how much? That conversation should change. Because here, people are generating real revenues. Understand? We should be talking about like opening up that space, educating. Ours is to educate that maybe here are the opportunities, right? And then from there, as government, we look for taxes. I'm just saying.
Tax is the next one. We're going to talk about tax. All right. I saw a hand there. I see another one at the back, and maybe if there's one more, then I'll take a third one. Go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening. My name is George Kinyanjui, and I'm a creative from Africa Live Media. So I've seen that our topic is government and media, and for the longest time in Kenya, is that you find that the government has always sort of controlled the media. In fact, if you look at all the laws that we might have, either from KFCB or to what is written right now, it's about controlling the media. Either they have prohibitive costs, or for you to film or you to do this, you have to follow a certain prohibitive sort of process. So I think if you're talking about changing the policies, I think it's good that we look at what is the law right now and see the things that we should either remove or improve. Yeah. Again, another side is we talk from policy, and then we have the funding. Because those are the two issues that affect the creative and the media industry and the cultural industry in Kenya. Funding and the policies. When it comes to funding, I think Clemo is saying that it should be treated as a business. Yes, yes, you are right to some point, because even as we have businesses which are creative and they are sustainable, but on the other hand, the government should at least give grants to those creative projects that are in their nascent stage. Like they haven't grown yet, so they should be given a little bit of maybe grants till to the point where they are a bit sustainable and they can take care of themselves. So maybe my question should be, for the part of Nairobi County Government, one, Governor Sakaja has given pronouncements that filmmakers can film for free, but what happens after he goes without changing the laws? Again, the other one is what funding models do we have right now, or you have maybe ideas of that we should maybe take as creatives? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Those excellent questions. I've just made a note of that, and I want to take the other two questions so that our panel can respond comprehensively. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Bruno. I'm a creative. I have a couple of questions for the panelists. First is, Clemo said that, okay, I've heard from the conversation that reaching the people is easier than the people coming to the government, right? So the government has made very many steps to reach the people, but has the government really made an effort to know if the people have responded to it? Because you can just reach the people, but I don't know if the message has reached to them, right? Like, suppose like something like this that is happening right now. It might be us, the few people here as creatives that know about it, but does the government know that how this information has reached the people out there? Because we creatives need it, but it is from the government. So if the government can put the proper measures to make the advertisements reach the people, it's easy, faster, it could be good. The second question was concerning the funding and making it a business. Okay, we as creatives do everything that we do to to bring food on our tables and support our families and friends, right? And with putting the creative content outside, we expect that the how will I put it? We expect the audience or the people who are going to receive it will respond well to it. But how does now the government now help us, the creatives, push it to the market? Because I feel like we do a lot. Okay, personally, as a creative, I feel like we people at the ghetto, we do a lot. But getting now the funding from the government is kind of hard. Or either way, you get the funding, but it's through a system that is kind of rigged, or something that is that's something that has happened to the system, that we, the youth, now don't really trust the system again. That's why you feel like us, the youth, don't really even want to come to the government again, because we feel like coming to the government, it's like tiresome. We can put a project like now, expecting like in the next 3 months to be fulfilled, but you can stay like a whole regime comes and goes, still the same project hasn't been fulfilled. Still again, they present the same project to another regime, the same system. We lost hope with the system that is there. So if there is a way that the government can reignite the hope to us, the creatives, so that we can really know that the government really works on us, the creatives, and helps us to make more, and if possible, us as creatives, there is a way that we can do things together with the government to make even those people who are not really here, because we have people in the ghetto and stuff, they can really get access to this information. They can benefit too, because it's not just us here. We have a lot of creatives out here, and they really need to hear this voice, not from me, but from the government too.
All right, Asante Sana. I'll take one more question, if there is one more.
My name is Kelvin, and I'm a creative undertaking. My question was if we can progress the culture like we were trying to align with the outsiders, how they do their work. We could instead, like how the United States does, the president issues his playlist or movies he has watched so that he can market it to the audience, which is his county. Maybe Clemo can work with the governor to do such a project where we can market our own products to the governor of the county. And also, I witnessed an interview by Eddie Butita where he mentioned that the government was planning to work with creatives. The ads that they'll be producing, they'll be marketed through creatives, but not the traditional media as it has been. And how is the progress, and how are they fast tracking it so that it can benefit the creatives?
All right. Thank you for those excellent questions. Maybe I'll start with the easiest one, which is what the gentleman has just shared, low-hanging fruit of the governor sharing, this is what I'm watching, this is what I'm reading, this is what I'm listening to. What's your response to that, Clemo? And then you can also respond to what has been asked about grants, funding models, and also prohibitive versus enabling laws. The situation right now is like restrictive instead of it being supportive.
What the last speakers, for me, what I'll say is this: I'll take it in as advice, right? And make sure that we encourage the leadership to promote. For me, I know automatically, definitely that transfer effect is important. Yes. So now that you've mentioned it, then for me, it's a valid point, which I've noted, duly noted. Yes.
On that, I'd also like to invite the governor to write in our Baraza newsletter, where we actually give opportunity for people to write issues important to the media ecosystem, and also to share what they're reading, what they're watching, and what they're listening to.
I shall put that information to him, yes.
So on the funding and on the legal framework.
I'll tackle the two questions together, right? Funding, like I said here, you know, there must be a basis for you to spend government money. Yeah? There must be some legal framework attached to it, right? There must be some way, form of justification. Without that, we can't talk about funding. That's why I'm inviting you to participate in the forthcoming stakeholders forum, which such points should be actually, you should make those points as we discuss, because everything will be taken in. Which brings to the point, to this point of public participation, which is actually enshrined in the Constitution. Right now, you can't do anything without proper public participation. And for us, I don't want us to just check some boxes. I want us to come up with real solutions. And I'll encourage youths, because youths like complaining generally. Oh, we are never given that opportunity. But if I was to sit down with the gentleman maybe and ask him a few questions, when was the last time you attended any public participation forum? Have you attended any? Your place? No, yours, okay. The gentleman, the question. How many times? Where was it? How many artists accompanied you? How many people are there?
Around 20, around. There weren't many.
Anyway, you see, you have to lobby. Lobbying is very important. Because here you're competing for very limited resources, right? You want people to take you serious. You have to go out there, talk to people who are like-minded. Go to these public participations and attend them. In fact, I'll tell you from my report, because right now I'm also the acting chief officer for public participation. So I have the data with me. People rarely attend. You'll find interested parties. You're there, maybe someone, you're talking about matatus. Instead of having everyone in the matatu industry attend those public participation, you find a section of maybe the owners of these the circles are the ones now giving their own opinions, of course, which will definitely be skewed to favor their ideas. But as long as there's no one there to oppose or to give divergent views, we'll definitely go with the ones with the majority, right? Yep. So, policy, I'm hoping police will handle the issue of funding, and for us to make a good policy that will serve everyone's interest, make sure that you participate in those public participation forums and give your views. Thank you.
Wainan, I'd like to direct you to the question about trusting the system. The gentleman talked about the way, we can say that we are going out as the county to engage with people, but are we actually reaching them? And what do we do about this perception that there's so much disappointment and the whole reason to engage is actually not worth it? The issue of distrust that he talked about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me. I think that if you, and Clemo has spoken about public participation, and I think in the forums that I've been able to attend, a couple of them, there's that mistrust between just the community and the county government. And I think some of it is legit because I think in the previous administrations, promises have been made. People go, I've attended them. In fact, some of them I've attended incognito, so as a resident. And I could see people giving their views, but then I think that is where it ends. I think in terms of follow-up and implementation, that has been lacking. And I think probably just to request that we give this administration a chance. I think, as Clemo has mentioned, I think we have a governor who is willing to engage, and I think we've seen that. However, that doesn't mean that we also we need to be following up some of these issues. So I think for the mistrust, I think it will take a bit of time, and I think it's upon us and the entire government to ensure that some of these inputs, some of these views, some of these aspirations that are given by the public are actually taken seriously. We may not implement everything, because if you go to those forums, you have all manner of proposals. But I think if we can be able to commit 1, 2, 3 things, I'm sure even when we go back to the next public participation, because some of them happen on an annual basis, we have a report to give back, that at least when we came, we were able to do 1, 2, 3 things. But I think that is something that now the ball is on our side. I think we just have to be able to be accountable to some of these forums that we are organizing as a county. So I think that's something we need to work. But let's give this administration a chance. I think it's unfortunate what has happened before. But I think there have been indications from this government, even for the creatives. Just the issue of low-hanging fruit, the issue of the photography on Sundays, over the weekends. There's even a young person who I think he's Nimsani, so approached us in the office and he was like, hey, by the way, kama kuna kitu gavana ametusaidia, ni by the way, kutuge space on a Sunday, and they come and do their thing. So I think for me, that is something which is really, we really appreciate what the governor has done. So, and we look forward, I think, for the public participation, and maybe Clemo, because he's the acting chief currently. I know it's an area that will need to be worked on. It has its own challenges. Yeah.
All right. Pao, if there's anything you'd want to respond to, I'll give you a chance now before I give everyone their final round of questions.
I just say that all governments across the board have a communication problem. So it's not it's not particular to just us. Even, but I mean, if you look at all state departments and all the parastatals, generally we have a communication problem because we are always churning out information, and information that should be coming to us somehow potters along the way. And probably that's also a challenge for you guys, that you have consistent and clearer communication. I like what Dan Otoyo is doing with PMCC, that at every state function there's an artist. So there's an entire repertoire of what's going to. There's an entire program. So you have these acrobats, you have these musicians. These guys will collab on a song. And if we have state dinners and things like that, there are those opportunities. I feel for the county events, and maybe that could be an approach, that you could get county artists, so that we don't. Yes, we don't. I don't have a problem with Muungano Choir, but also can we get Wakadinali or somebody like that to perform in these official functions? Yeah, that also Wakadinali.
Go for Wakadinali fans. We see you. We see you. We see you.
Yeah, so and that has worked over time. So I know for the next is Mashujaa Day. I'm expecting a totally different song by totally different artists than the guys who performed at Madaraka Day. So probably that will be another low-hanging fruit for you. Also, I perform if you want somebody to come and sing. Actually, I don't. I'm just joking.
All right. So we are coming to the end of our time together, and I'm going to ask the final round of questions. As you answer, take it as your chance to make your closing remarks. So I'll start with you, Wainaina. I want you to just touch on collaborations with educational institutions and cultural centers in the city to nurture and support emerging talent in the creative field. What are some of the plans or ideas that the county government has with these institutions that are already in place? So for example, one huge pipeline for talent in this country is the national music festivals, the drama festivals, what happens in the schools, even in churches. We're living in a very dynamic and vibrant city already. What are some of the ways that the county government can, really be in contact with that energy and dynamism that is already existing in the city?
I think for the cultural center, because Clemo is here, I think that falls under, he's in a better place to respond to that. But I think for the educational institutions, the county, and probably most of us are aware, there are functions that are in national government and the county. So we have two main functions. We have the one on early childhood education and the one on technical and vocational education, TVET. Of course, the primary and high school, that is a function done by the national government. So for the ECDs, because that is PP1, playgroup, PP2, the county, in fact, coincidentally, I think the county will be represented in a festival. I think there's normally the national festival where our early childhood learners will be participating. So we have been participating in those festivals, I think, like every year. And even for the ones for the TVET, I think probably not as frequent as the early childhood, but there's that opportunity where young people, and I think we have quite a number of, we have almost 113 ECDs in Nairobi. So there's normally even competition among the ECDs to identify probably the best musician, the best dancers, who will now go and represent Nairobi County within the national festivals. And I think then maybe the opportunity is how can that be nurtured? Because at that level, if you're able to identify a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, then what happens? Because then when they go to primary school, they're no longer under our care. They are going to, it's done by national government. I think there's an opportunity there for county government, and but we are normally engaged in those festivals. So that has been happening every year, and I think in the coming maybe a couple of weeks, there'll be the festivals that will be represented. For the TVET, I also know will be represented in some of these festivals. But I think the challenge, not just even for the county, is how do you take this to another level? So if you're able to nurture, identify that talent at that level, so your talent inakuzwaje? And I think for the longest time, that was also the challenge we had as a country. We had these opportunities, but ikifika mahali pengine, then people go to other careers, because probably even the opportunities were not as they are now. But I think fortunately, I think now in this generation that we're having, just as Clément has mentioned, the employment opportunities that are there currently, I think most of them are in the creative space.
That's true, yep.
And the tech space. And I think that's the theme of this Innovation Week. So I'm feeling there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of them, that creatives, young people need to take up. And these ones, some of them don't require funding, because I think there's that aspect of funding that is coming out. But I believe funding will follow creatives or young people who are already doing something. Funding itakuja tu kwako ati jume apply. People want to see what are you doing at your own level. So what small thing are you doing? So I think that for me is the encouragement. That opportunities will come there, people will see you. Clément will organize Nairobi Festival. It's coming up this year again. You know, these are some of the opportunities where people get for just showcase what they're doing. And my final remarks or closing remarks will be, because what our sector deals with, as I mentioned, even sports, and what we are good at, and that's what government, and I think sometimes it looks like a cliche, that government, the bigger responsibility is enabling environment, infrastructure, but that is what really government does, issues of policy and legislation. However, we are also open to partner with organizations that in different spaces. And I think, for instance, I'll just give an example. Libraries are also under our docket. And if you check out, we have a library in Eastland, there's a library in Kaloleni. that have been transformed through partnerships with organizations. So we've partnered with the organization called Book Bank Trust, and they're also in the process of also transforming Macmillan Library in town. So the opportunities of partnership, and I think that becomes a win-win situation for all of us. So I think for me that is the encouragement that we have. This government has an open door policy. Let's try and reach out. And of course, where there are challenges, let us be told in some of these forums. Let us be told candidly, but let's also propose solutions, because I think we are always, I don't know if it's a Kenyan problem, but suteta sana. But in terms of solutions, we don't, that is not our priority. So even as we bring it out issues which are valid, let's also propose solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution to this panel. I'll shift to Pau. You could respond with some closing remarks or insights. But what I would like to hear is, you know, when Anna had begun to speak about technology and digital platforms, of course, Nairobi is known as this, you know, innovation hub. What would you say is the opportunity there to support and promote Nairobi's creative industry?
Let me respond first to what he says, and just add to his point that you know, yes, education is not fully devolved, but we have county schools, and probably what I think we can do with them, because now you're looking for solutions, is we can pinpoint a few to create centers of excellence. Because if you think about it, I don't know who was the best solo verse person at the last festivals, and I guarantee you 90% I might probably not know them or not see them again. Because what we do with arts and creativity in schools is for, you know, we are going for a funky, or we are going for a competition, and after that, we are out. While I was a public servant, we tried to come up with something that we call the National Theatre Master Plan, which meant that if you are excelling in the theatre, there's opportunity for you to keep going on through the theatre up until you figure out what you want to do. What that will do ideally is it will make money for you, because if you've noticed recently, theaters, you know, and the trajectory was not, you know, the expected 45%, you know, it's 60%. So we have a lot more shows, and a lot of these shows are going to theater places, KNT, people are putting up shows at Breban, Oshol, and places like this. What we have in some of those schools, so for example, at Lavington Primary, or at St. George's Primary and places like this, they already have this theater and halls that these guys who are looking for spaces could come and perform at and could charge. So the county makes the money, and the people make the money. But only if we consider these places as centers of excellence. So we grow both the art and the people. During school holidays, you can do theater camps. I know as well that the county has seconded teachers to all their schools. Could we probably consider and think about, you know, are we sending creative teachers, or are we just doing numbers? And for this theater, these centers of excellence, can we figure out which teachers need to go to this school that will give us the best footballers in town? And this one needs, this one looks like it has the best musicians. Which teachers can we send here? But that's just to respond to you. The one thing we keep saying is that prototyping is expensive. And as a closing remark, prototyping is extremely expensive. And you know, I grew up in Eastleigh, California, and every day there were soccer games, Apodeza. Every day. When these ones leave, somebody else is out there. When this one leaves, somebody else is out there. And people will go on and do great things, but then there was no opportunity, in my view then and now, for people to get out. The only people who would get out are people who probably played for MISA. And I'm using soccer as an example. So they will go to Norway or Sweden, they'd be poached. What they would come back with then was scholarships. And not necessarily money, but opportunities to study, because we figure that education will probably be a good key. My ask for you, Clément, and the county government is there an opportunity to give scholarships for creatives who excel? And that's why I said prototyping is expensive. It's probably not going to be in this financial year. It's probably going to be into, because the current budgets are hardwired, yeah? But for the next, at our public participation, can we probably consider upgrading these places that artists can perform at, that schools where people can go and play soccer at, and both making money for them and also for the institutions, because the institutions also have to sustain themselves. Then finally, I know, and again, I'm pushing for funding with what Mombasa is doing, and Embu is doing the same as well with the Chief Officer Pithon Mushoki, and Machakos, and I'm hoping my great county of Siaya can do something for us as well, but I'm a resident in Nairobi. You had the Battle of the Choirs, great opportunity for musicians. You have the Nairobi Festival. I still think you can give us money for film, or you can give us a competition where if we create great content, the county can give us money for what we've done, and we can co-own the work. Because if these creatives take their work out and it makes money, it's also great for the great city of Nairobi. Also with regards to tourism, like low-hanging fruits, I think we can do this. But like I've said, the next financial year, and at the next public participation, I'm coming there with a placard. Fix the sound. No, I'm kidding.
Fix the sound. All right, we're going to end with Clément. A lot of what has been discussed in this room has been directed to you for solutions, for answers, for all these things. But I'd like just to shift the tone a bit. You can respond to anything that has been mentioned here that you would want to give a response to. But for me, my closing question to you would be this. When you were in that studio 20 years ago with people who ended up being superstars, Juakali, Nonini, all those people, what you were doing there was against great odds, really massive odds that any of that even happened. I just want you to think back to yourself in that studio in California Estate. What are some of the things that you wished for at that moment? And this is not to put yourself today on the spot to give your past self solutions. It's not a way to like kujihang, but it's really just for us to see you in that context. What are some of the things that at that moment you really wished for? So that perhaps the people in the room who are coming up could see continuity between what you were able to achieve back then and the kind of support that they might need today.
In retrospect, I'll answer. In retrospect and looking at the way the situation is right now,
yes,
I dreamt that one day people will look at the music industry as a source of livelihood, and it's happening. So I basically achieved what I dreamt of. But obviously, there are issues today. Like I said, equality. Not everyone is gaining from their work, and that should be addressed. I have a son who is a budding producer, like his dad. And I'm looking at him and thinking about the industry and what we had to go through. I was lucky. Will he be as lucky? That is a question. How do we create opportunities for such artists, such upcoming artists, producers? Good laws that protect everyone in that space. So that is what I feel strongly about. And like I said, we have to talk about the let's grab that elephant. Tupige booty, back it to the line. Right? Let's agree that we have good ideas as a country, but we don't like sharing. Let's address that, and everything else will fall in place. So that is my winding remark.
Great. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you to our esteemed panelists. Thank you, Clemo. Thank you, Wainaina. Thank you, Pau, for being here, for sharing your insights, your experiences, and your ideas. Thank you for the participation in the room. I would like to close this session by inviting a creative now. His name is Samuel Njoroge, also known as Priest the Poet, who will perform one poem to close this session. Karibu sana. And I'll ask our panelists to leave the stage, but thank you so much, and Priest the Poet, take it away.
So it is nice to be here. You say it's wonderful to be here. It's nice to be here. Kindly, some energy. I'm made to understand that it's in the lunch hours. The body ain't in motion, so give me an energy, so it's nice to be here. You say it's wonderful to be here. It's nice to be here. It's wonderful to be here. When I say it's na, you say it's wa. It's na. It's wa. It's wa na. Thank you. I go by the name Priest the Poet. I'm a spoken word artist alongside Koni Muziki, a great acoustic guitarist, straight out Nax Vegas. We are proud Nax Vegas. And we will do a piece called Wasanii Kilio cha Jamii. So I'm hoping mutafurahia. So if you can hear me, clap once. Some energy. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. So tupate kujiweka tayari ili tuweze kufanya shairi takatifu. And he is way bigger than short baba. Aliniita mimi mwana. That's why napiga kelele takatifu. Kwa pamoja kama nyash, tusemeni aminia.
Aminia.
Tusemeni aminia.
Aminia.
Wasanii kilio cha jamii. Wasanii kilio cha jamii. Nasema wasanii kilio cha jamii. Wasanii kilio cha jamii. So naamini kama msanii, mimi ni kioo cha jamii. Yangu ni kuhimiza, kuburudisha na kuelimisha. That's why kwa flag ya Kenya kuna the thin white double line. Amani, amani, amani ya Bwana wetu Yesu Kristo, upendo wa Mungu Baba, ushirika wa Roho Mtakatifu iwe nanyi nyote. Semeni iwe pia nami. Semeni iwe pia nami. Iwe pia nami, na the best way walimu na madaktari wanafanya demonstration by kurusha mawe barabarani, bila kusahau mavocha na manguruwe wanalala mabungeni wakiclaim waongezewe allowances on top of their mamilioni. Si mwaka jana walituomba kura na vitambi zimechapa dunga so high. Ni lini vijana creatives mtarealize mko under the influence of tricycle? Kila Jumatatu mnakimbia Nairobi smoking zone, Tear Gas Monday. Ni lini vijana mtarealize mulimeza padlock?
ikakatalia kwa koo. Munatafuta the right keys and manual notes ndio muimbe national anthem, mujiremind the patriots you should be. Sio kupiga domo daima mimi Mkenya, juu utakuwa showcase the parrot you can be. Na ni funny, as we age, the world is becoming younger and in possession of the evil one. Tunachekelea hao morons, Masai wakichapa dress code ya shuka, leso, akala tunaclaim ni party. Yet hizo party ndizo tourist attraction income into this country. But my message is, tusikubali kubleed ndio mavocha na manguruwe watu lead. Let us all creatives merge with the government so that we can eradicate all the backlashes in the creative economy. And that's my humble plea. Wasanii kilio cha jamii, wasanii kilio cha jamii, wasanii kilio cha jamii, na. Father Macarius, I'm all the way up, blazing and flaming like Elijah's chariots. Dominus vobiscum et cum spiritu tuo. And may the good Lord bless you in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Go forth in peace. Our holy poem has ended. Priest, the poet.